and Mount Vernon tours. So you can do one or the other, or you can want to stay with us Saturday to Saturday. You can spend the whole week with us. We'll take care of you. And all you got to do is get to these places. Get to Washington, D.C. For the Williamsburg tour, we meet at the airport there in D.C. and we drive down, we bus down. So that's in June and September. Those tours are halfway to 2/3 full. So, but it's a lot of fun, and people like you who listen to AFR from all over the country will be on those tours. Also, Stephen McDowell, president of the Providence Foundation, a real historian, will be with us on the tours to talk and give commentary all along the way. The stories Stephen tells is fascinating. He's like a walking encyclopedia of American history. And then in October, we got a brand new tour that Wesley and Walker are doing. Allison, my wife, and I, we're going. Stephen McDowell and his wife's going. Tim Barton from Wall Builders, we're all going on this tour of Boston, the greater Boston area, Ed's old stomping ground. So it's going to be a new trip for us, but we got so many fun things planned and interesting things planned during that week in Boston. That's in October. That we got like 75 people now signed up for that one, and well, like 100 seats available. So you can see we'll be filling up that one pretty quick. So one other thing, and we'll be talking about this more, but we set the itinerary for March of next year, like a year from now. There's going to be 2 tours. One is Israel. That's our annual trip to the Holy Land in March. And then back to back with that is the Footsteps of Paul tour that Wesley and Walker are leading. So you can do both of those back to back if you want to, or you can do one or the other.
Yep, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's
a
lot of time in Greece, the Footsteps of Paul. If you want to read about any of what I just said, all the information is at the website I'm about to give you, WILDMON group.com. Right, Wesley?
That's right. Yep. WildmanGroup.com.
WILDMON group.com. The DC tour, the Williamsburg tour, the Boston tour, and then the 2026 March trips to Israel and Greece are Footsteps of Paul. Everything, the itinerary, everything you need to know, the pricing, everything is available at that website, wildmangroup.com. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Just sit back and you'll hear a tale, a fateful trip.
Oh, talking about our tours?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
3 hours.
That's a good selling point, Steve.
I don't think we're not planning on being castaways.
I hope not.
On a Greek island somewhere. All right, so Tim, Ed, Wesley, and now Steve Paisley Jordan joins us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brother Steve. What is your first story?
Well, I heard you talking earlier about a certain Rosie O'Donnell who went off to Ireland.
Well, she went off all right. Off the rails.
President Trump is actually speaking into this. I'd like to let you hear what he has to say.
This is what I don't like. This is bad Trump usually, but go ahead.
Well, 16.
My fellow Americans, this is the greatest achievement of my administration to date. Rosie O'Donnell has deported herself out of the United States of America. She moved to Ireland. So much for luck of the Irish. That's a lot of bad luck when you look at it. Quite frankly, the worst luck the world has ever seen. But I just got off the phone with Ireland, and they said to me, "Sir, Rosie O'Donnell is now in our country. What do we do, sir?" I said, "You have to keep her." They said, "But sir, she's going to cause another famine." I said, "That's your problem now. You have to keep her. Don't you dare send her back. If you send her back, I'm going to hit you with 4,000% tariffs if you send her back. We're not going to let it happen."
Who was that? That wasn't really Trump. That sounded just like him. Who was that?
That was Sean Farash, who's a Trump impersonator or conservative blogger or podcaster.
That's a guy who, when President Trump got elected in November, said happy days are here again. Because he could have continued doing the Trump invitation, but with 4 years of Trump,
Yeah.
God willing.
So you're
Yeah.
going to fit a 4,000% tariff
Yeah.
and try to send her back, huh?
And seriously, this is really the truth. Do you know who's in Ireland today besides
Marco Rubio, right?
Marco Rubio on behalf of the president? President Trump is sending.
He's trying to secure a deal that they keep Rosie O'Donnell no matter what happens.
That might be why he's there, but Trump is following Rosie over to Ireland.
Ireland.
It was
I
fun.
didn't understand the crack about she's going to cause a famine.
I don't know.
Could you
Yeah, I don't
explain
get
that?
There's a long history there
Yeah, I know.
between Trump and Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah.
And Trump prevailed.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, I hope, like the Pied Piper, that many Hollywood stars follow her out.
So far, none that I've heard of, but you never know.
They just blow hards. If Trump gets elected, I'm leaving. Then they never do.
No. You know why?
Why?
Because this country rocks.
Right. Duly noted. All right, Steve, next story.
All right. To say that we dodged a bullet when we elected Donald Trump, he literally dodged a bullet, but the country did too. I want to play you a tale that Speaker Johnson told of a meeting he had with Donald Trump. This will
I thought
talk.
it was with Joe Biden.
I'm sorry, with Joe Biden. Yeah, my
There's a
bad.
big difference.
Yeah, it is a big difference.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson had this meeting with Joe Biden, and this is a little longer cut. It's about 2.5 minutes, but I think it's worth the time to listen to what was going on in the White House. Cut 11.
January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked, I became speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on, and I started requesting a meeting with the president because, you know, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line with the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, you know, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Will y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief, so everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
Wow. Hey,
What was the talk show? Who was he
That
talking
was Barry Weiss, the former New York Times reporter.
Yeah, okay.
Now, we can no longer be accused of speculating.
Right. That's the
Because
Speaker of the
that's
House.
the Speaker of the House. So what what we all thought and believed was going on, now we have evidence and confirmation.
So, yeah, we talked, I think, yesterday a little bit about majority of the executive orders and documents that Joe Biden signed were actually signed by what's called an auto pen. Do you remember this conversation? It's an actual physical machine where you put a pen in a machine that holds it to the paper, and then the computer actually traces the signature of the person, and Joe Biden in this case. And you can look because they're identical. You know, like a mirror image of each other. No one signs their name that identically twice. So it's definitely, they know which ones are by the auto pen, and almost all, not all, but almost all of the documents that were signed during his
Like executive order documents. Yeah.
Well, bills. I don't know. Sometimes, if he has a signing ceremony in the White House and hands out pens, obviously he's signing that.
Sure.
Right.
Can you imagine Speaker Johnson leaving the White House going, I'm number 3 in line to be president, and I don't even know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do and I don't. You know, I know that the president is incapacitated, basically, from a mental standpoint. And what do we do about it? You know what? A couple, 3 things about this. I don't want to revisit this too long because we talked about it a lot. Okay, the Democrats deserve to be in the minority right now and to not be in the White House for this reason alone. They put our country at risk by knowingly having a fella in the White House in charge who was mentally compromised, did not know what was going on, had to be shuffled around. And of course, the whole world saw that in June of 2024 at the debate when he was staring off into space. And we were being gaslighted by the Democrats and the media and the White House. Now, yes, we were being gaslighted, but guess what? We all knew what was going on here. It was everything I just described. You remember that photograph of him over there in Italy, I think it was? And you got these 4 or 5 European leaders up there, and Biden's just wandering off out into the field. Mm-hmm. And then Karine Jean-Pierre says, oh, that's normal. He just trying to point out something over there.
The debate was one more blow in the media's
lack of credibility. Well, then he was after the whole world saw what was going on at the debate. Then he was pressured by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and others to say he wasn't going to run. And then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute.
They're the one.
You're not going to run because you're incapable of handling it, but the Democrats going to leave you for 7 more months while the world's on fire. That doesn't give you any comfort at all. So the Democrats. I don't know who's in charge of their party now, but whoever the power brokers are, maybe there's a power vacuum there. I don't know right now. But they don't get me wrong. I'm glad they lost. Okay, because President Trump and the conservatives are doing great things for our country right now. So I'm glad they lost. But I'm just saying, if you don't care who won or lost, and you want to look at what happened, the Democrats would have had a much better chance to keep the White House and maybe keep the Congress had Biden stepped down along the way, maybe at the midterm, and maybe they couldn't make him. Maybe Jill Biden was blocking them, and she wouldn't, because she was probably the most power-hungry person in the world. Knowing she sees her husband all day, every day, and she knows what's going on, and she's like weekend at Bernie's.
Propping them up. Yeah.
Go prop Joe up today, give him some drugs or something. But we got to stay in the White House. I'm Jill Biden. I want to have access to all this, all these perks. But anyway, they would have done better, politically speaking, in terms of having a chance, had they gone through a nomination process.
That's right.
And not just coronating Kamala Harris, which everybody knew was a high risk at losing. And now I don't know if they could have come up with anybody better, Steve, or not.
Not a very deep bench.
Not a very deep bench, but I think to me personally, that governor of Pennsylvania or the
Yeah.
governor even of Michigan would have had a better chance to.
Well, the governor of Pennsylvania was Jewish, and we know what's happening on the campuses and what the Democrat Party.
Yeah, but he would have had a better chance of beating
Shapiro.
Trump than she did.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris.
for one thing, you would have been able to some extent, run away from the Biden economy.
Yes,
You could have run away from it as a Democrat, as
right.
you know, as a.
We're going to change these things.
We're going to change these things, but if you're going to stick with Kamala Harris, and in the way it was done, it was not
Right.
democratically selected. Now you're stuck with the last 4 years, and that's a great part of what sunk the Democratic Party. You would have made the election about Donald Trump if you have Shapiro or somebody
Right,
else,
that's right.
as opposed to making it about the last 4 years under Biden.
And Kamala Harris, with all, should I say due respect? Listen, I don't know her. Maybe she may
Maybe
be.
she's totally different than what she appears.
She may be a really nice person, just one-on-one with folks. I mean, I don't know her. I'm just saying, we all knew she was not fit to be president whatsoever. She was a DEI hire. What'd you say?
Three fries
short of a Happy Meal?
Happy Meal.
Well, listen, she was elected senator in California, and she was elected statewide as attorney general. So she did have some background of success in
But
politics.
she ran in 2016 and she was the first to drop out of about 18.
Yes. Woefully unqualified intellectually, and her inability to articulate anything.
Or in debate.
Yes, she is a terrible candidate. President Obama knew this. He tried to get the Democrats to steer away from coordinating her behind the scenes, but he knew such a good chance she would lose. So, but the problem is they were stuck.
Reminiscent memory lane here.
Well, they were stuck with her because she was a woman of color, and you can't say no, you can't run because then she would have said, well, you're not letting me run because I'm a woman of color.
Therefore, you're racist.
They would have said, no, we're not letting you run because you're going to lose because you're a terrible candidate. No, you're not letting me run because you see what I'm saying? But she was originally a DEI hire.
That's right.
Because Biden
Made it specific.
yeah, he said you have to be these things or you won't be my running
I am
mate.
going to choose a black woman to be my running mate.
Right, right.
And he's not even a biologist. I don't know.
I don't know how do you know.
That was right there.
The Democrats seem to be unusually wed to this next man or woman up code ever since Obama. So they had to know that Hillary Clinton wasn't real. I mean, she was articulate, yes. She had all the degrees and everything, but her likability, her favorables were
When you're talking about when she ran it.
when she ran in 2016.
She at least was smart.
Well, yeah, but
No, what I'm saying is
Hillary Clinton, yeah.
So her favorability ratings were in the toilet, if I can quote Archie Bunker.
She just wasn't very likable.
But she wasn't likable. But she at least was very politically astute.
But she was the
As
next
opposed
woman
to
up.
Kamala Harris.
She was
Yeah.
the next woman up. Remember, they bypassed Bernie Sanders, and everybody thought that he might have been the next person up. But then Kamala, Joe Biden was the next person up, and then Kamala. They just can't break the chain.
Well,
Anyway, to the original story, this is the Speaker of the House
right,
saying on the record
right.
his horror story of the person who's supposedly in charge of the most powerful nation on earth not being in charge of the most powerful nation on earth.
For how many months did that go on?
Yes.
Next story, Steve.
All right.
You got the cat story, Steve?
We're
We're about out of time here.
Yeah, we can do this.
Maybe do two. I don't care. But
No, well, let me start
cat
here.
story.
The new owner of a Tesla is Donald Trump. He can't drive it, but he owns it now.
Secret Service won't let him drive, probably. will
That's
they?
correct.
Right.
But he in solidarity with Elon Musk, he decided to buy a Tesla. Not that Elon needs the money, and not that
Personally, buy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was him at the at the White House. He was talking to his to the press who was there, and I think you're going to hear Peter Ducey talking cut 9.
Hello, President Trump. Are you looking to buy or lease today?
Well, I'm going to buy. And I'm going to buy because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets. And number two, because this man has devoted his energy and his life to doing this. I think he's been treated very unfairly by a very small group of people. And I just want people to know that you can't be penalized for being a patriot. And he's a great patriot.
There's
Good for him.
now there is now
Good for
Trump.
him.
There's now Elon derangement syndrome. That's a thing.
Yes.
Well, Elon Musk is only, to me, pointing out government waste and fraud and abuse. Who could be against that? I don't understand.
The entirety of the Democratic Party and liberals in
But
Hollywood.
the question would be why?
Yes.
You know?
Why indeed?
I don't think they have good motives.
No, as we said, we might have talked about this in our story meeting. To me, it is because the left wants the administrative state.
Yes.
They deep down hate the Constitution because the Constitution wants separation of powers, whereas the left wants aggregation of powers.
Yes.
And Elon Musk, who is associated with Donald Trump, so two strikes against him, is trying to expose the corruption of the administrative state, and that's why the left is going after.
Good for Elon Musk, and I hope he stays with it. And I'm glad President Trump is sticking with him. There's a wedge, I'm sure, is trying to be driven between the two. And President Trump yesterday symbolically said, "I'm standing and I appreciate what Elon Musk is doing for our country, and I'm going to buy a Tesla just to prove it."
Right.
To further prove it. Now we got a really feel good story.
Yeah, we do. Miss Catherine Kiefer lost her house in the Palisades fire, which isn't good. She thought she lost her cat as well. The cat's name was Aggie, the Maine Coon. They're very loving cats. And so she had been mourning this, but all of a sudden, guess who shows up? Aggie shows up. Aggie had been hanging out somewhere in the ashes, I guess. She was near starvation, but they got her in time and took her to the vet. And now mom and cat mom and cat are reunited.
Because cats, in a lot of ways, are different than dogs. Dogs are going to hang close to their owners, but when things are like fire and that kind of thing, sometimes cats will leave and hide just for their own self-preservation. Isn't that what happened? The cat took off, and she thought that it perished as the fire swept through, but apparently the cat...
Whole 9 lives were taken up on that.
Yeah. That's a great story. And also, I was reading a story earlier, about a week ago, about a dog that traveled like 50 miles to get back to its owner after the owner got separated from the dog.
I love those kind of stories.
Yeah, the dogs just have a sense of direction.
Yeah.
It's a movie I used to watch with my little kids called Homeward Bound. It was about
It was 2 dogs and a cat.
Yeah. 2 dogs and a cat.
They got lost. They found their way back.
And they
you know what was amazing about that? They knew English.
I know,
they
that
talked.
was.
They could speak.
talked to one another.
One of them was Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
The voice, I think.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this program, Today's Issues. We invite you to keep listening throughout the day to American Family Radio. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 10:05 Central Time for more of Today's Issues.
My father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war. And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
As Christians, how can we even begin to impact others when we live in a culture where truth is relative? It all Frank Turek.
Evolution describes what does behave, not what ought to behave, right? It doesn't give you oughts, it just gives you what does happen.
Todd Herman.
God always uses evil for good. He is very intentional, and he intentionally chose you to live through times such as these.
And more. The main sessions are for ages 13 and up, while Activate Kids is a separate track for ages 6 through 12. Register for Activate Summit 2025 by visiting activate.afa.net/summit. Activate Summit 2025. Activate.afa.net/summit.
Christians, they're suffering big time in Africa, and they need our help. Hi, this is Michael Woolworth with Bible League International, and Pastor Lumo ministers in Mozambique near the Indian Ocean. He's been beaten and jailed not for what he believes, but for how he lives out his faith. You see, Lumo has been quietly and faithfully sharing the gospel with Muslims, and many have come to Christ in recent months. But extremists here, they have assaulted him, his family, and many in his church. But you know what? They're not asking for an end to the persecution they face. They're praying for Bibles to open and read every day in order to be able to endure and persevere as new followers of Christ. Hey, give thanks if your pastor hasn't been beaten and jailed, but please don't turn a deaf ear to these pleas for Bibles. Instead, help support the church in Africa by sending a Bible to these waiting Christians at only $5 a Bible, or $100 sends 20. Call 800-YES-WORD, 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 or visit sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org, and God bless you for caring.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members to the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten. Without Trinity support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
This is a very concrete kingdom, isn't it? This is a kingdom where he will reign all nations, all people, all languages, and he will have dominion. And this will be an everlasting dominion.
Welcome to In Grace with Jim Scudder, the senior pastor of Quentin Road Baptist Church in suburban Chicago. He is a strong advocate of the nation of Israel and leads annual tours to the Holy Land.
I'm so glad that you've tuned in to In Grace today on our radio program or on our podcast. We're so thankful for you. Would you make sure you spread the word and let others know about the ministry of In Grace? That would be wonderful. We also would love to hear from you. If you'd ever like to contact us and let us know how In Grace has been a blessing to you, I'd love for our staff to hear those things, those compliments or criticisms. If it's a criticism, I'll send it to my staff. If it's a compliment, they'll send it to me. You can write us a note on our website, ingraceradio.com, or you can call us at 1-800-78-GRACE, or you can write to us at In Grace, P.O. Box 9, Lake Zurich, Illinois 60047. Today, we continue the series Deciphering Daniel, and we're going to talk about the revised Roman Empire. Now, today, we're going to talk a little bit about the kingdom that's coming after the four world Gentile dominating kingdoms. So there was Babylon, the Medes and Persians, there was the Greeks, Alexander the Great, and then we know that the Romans came, and the Romans are coming back, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the revised Roman Empire, the world's humanistic system opposing God. But then there's a kingdom that fills the entire earth. It's the kingdom of Jesus, the kingdom of Christ, where he'll rule and reign on the planet. We're going to talk about that from Daniel chapter 7 today, and tomorrow we're going to talk more about that revised Roman Empire. So you definitely want to tune in to tomorrow's In Grace. Don't forget, we have a free prophecy chart called Deciphering Daniel, and you can get that by calling us at 1-800-78-GRACE or going to ingraceradio.com.
There was once a photographer for a national news magazine that was asked to cover a forest fire. So we decided the best way to do that is to hire an airplane. So he called his editor and said, listen, I've got to get out and get a picture of, or pictures of this forest fire, have an airplane ready to go at the small local airport, have it running, I'll jump in and we'll get going to meet his deadline. And so the photographer arrived at the airport, there was an airplane, he jumped in and he says, go, go, go. Well, the pilot's like, okay, a little startled, but advanced the throttle and took off. And the photographer said, now listen, I need you to make 3 low passes over here by this massive forest fire. And the pilot said, why? He said, well, because I'm a photographer and I take pictures. That's what I do. And the pilot said, so you're not my instructor? The world is out of control. We have people in power today that are not good leaders. We see a vacuum in our world of people that are inept, that shouldn't be at the controls. And that's going to lead to a very evil and wicked person being at the controls of a one world government in the future. How do I know this? Because the Bible clearly speaks of this. Now, this church has historically had a position on Bible prophecy that's called pre-tribulational rapture, pre-millennial reign of Christ. That Jesus is coming back at the beginning of 1,000-year literal reign of Christ. People that hold this view of eschatology are often mocked. But let me point out 2 things that our model would predict. One, a reunification of Europe. That has not happened since the days of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire never was conquered. It just slowly ceased to exist because of debauchery, because of wickedness. It never was conquered. And the Bible predicts, as we'll see today, that this Roman Empire will be revived. And what do we see today? In our lifetimes, in the lifetime of people that you know, a union of European nations exists today. And it's growing and it's stronger. You say, wait, Pastor Scudder, Brexit, right? Brexit. Well, I don't know what all that means in light of Bible prophecy, but I know for sure it's going to come into play in a very important way in the future. 27 nations with such different cultures, languages, divisions. I mean, think about all of the wars and things that have been fought in Europe have come together willingly as a union, with each nation sending a representative, non-elected, to represent not their country, but to represent the interests of the union. Now, is the European Union, which is a political and economic union, is that the revised Roman Empire? I don't know that it is, but certainly it is a precursor to what we're going to read about today in Daniel chapter 7. It's astounding. You say, well, Pastor, what would the other thing be that a premillennial, pre-tribulational view of Bible prophecy predict? It also predicts a return of the Jew to the land of Israel. The Bible has many predictions that the Jews would be dispersed and scattered, and they were when Titus came in, killed 1 million Jewish people, or more than 1 million, destroyed the temple, destroyed the city, just as Jesus had predicted, and he later became the emperor of Rome. He took those that he didn't kill and scattered them across the world. And for centuries, the Jewish people were not in the land of Israel. Never has a nation reassembled itself in the history of mankind, except for the Bible said that I will scatter my earthly people, the Jews, but I will regather them. And you know what? It happened in lifetime of someone you know. Okay? It's an incredible thing that Israel has been regathered. Why do they need to be regathered? Because God talks about them being in the land as a people, as a nation, in the what we call the 70th week of Daniel. We'll learn more about that in Daniel 9. It's another astounding prophecy that the Bible talks about, and a at least partial fulfillment of the return of the Jewish people has occurred. Hebrew was not a language. It was gone. It was not a spoken language, but it was resurrected. I mean, the whole story of Israel that has survived the onslaught of its enemies, wave after wave of people that hated the Jewish people, wanted them literally annihilated. They were able to survive all of that, and there they are today, the only democracy in the Middle East. The Bible predicted that. A pre-tribulational, premillennial view would also have predicted that. And therefore, I love this view of Bible prophecy. It connects all the dots. It helps me understand everything prophetically in the Bible. So let's go into that. Let's look at it today. First of all, before we start studying more on Daniel 7, and that's where we find ourselves, let's think back through the book of Daniel. Remember the first 6 chapters were a kind of a biography of Daniel, a young man, chapter 1, taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon. It was predicted, by the way, in the Bible predicted a 70-year captivity of the southern kingdom of Israel, of Judah. That's where Daniel lived. That's where Jerusalem is. And it happened. He was taken captive. Other young Hebrew men were taken captive. And that's Daniel in Daniel 1.
Does end times prophecy leave you feeling confused? Are you searching for tools to help you understand it? Call 800-78-GRACE today to receive your stunning Deciphering Daniel Prophecy Chart, completely free. This educational chart vividly outlines the timeline of end times events and is designed to complement Jim Scudder's Deciphering Daniel audio series. When you give a gift of $35 or more, you'll receive the entire 26-part Deciphering Daniel audio series, diving deeper into the remarkable prophecies of Daniel. As a bonus, you'll also get the book, The Coming World Leader, a timely resource exploring the rise of the Antichrist. For gifts of $100 or more, you'll receive the Armageddon's Dawn video series, filmed in Israel, detailing end times events in Revelation, and the quest to rebuild the Jewish temple video series, a fascinating exploration of one of the most crucial elements of end times prophecy, the third temple. To complete your end times collection, we'll include the book End of Time, expanding your understanding of Bible prophecy even further. Don't miss this incredible offer. Call 800-78-GRACE or visit ingraceradio.com today.
Now we're going to look at prophecy. Daniel 7 through 12 is about Bible prophecies, and a lot of these things are so detailed and match so incredibly with the book of Revelation. The 2 heavyweights of Bible prophecy are Daniel and Revelation. A lot of other prophecies that come into it, both in the Old and New Testament, lots of other things, but the 2 main ones that we would go to and see what the Bible says about the future is Daniel and Revelation, and they merge together so perfectly, as we're going to see today. Daniel 7, last time we talked about these 4 beasts. You have a lion with wings. We have a bear with 3 bones in his mouth and is risen up on one side. We have a 4-headed leopard with 4 wings. And then this 4th beast is a beast that doesn't even have a counterpart in zoology. This is a beast that you're not going to find in a zoo. It's a terrible beast, and that's what we're going to zero in on today as we continue through Daniel chapter 7. We also have, for those of you in the room, have given you a prophecy chart deciphering Daniel that has all of these components listed here on a timeline that really helps us understand that. If you are not in the room, you can go to our website and get this for free, and we would encourage you to do that. And this is chapter 2. We just discussed this statue, the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. By the way, it wasn't laying down, of course. It was standing up, but this will help you see it in a timeline format. So Daniel 2, the image of Nebuchadnezzar, head of gold. was Babylon, the chest and arms of silver, the Medes and Persians. By the way, Medes and Persians, we have two arms of that empire. Greece is the midsection of bronze, and then the legs of iron are two legs. So you have an Eastern and a Western empire of Rome. And then we separate it here because there's a time gap, and then there's the feet of iron and clay, and this is what we call the revised Roman Empire. So that is the Daniel 2 prophecy, and see how these line up. This is the vision of chapter 7, a lion with wings. That is Babylon. We saw that last time. And then we have the next image lining up with the Medes and the Persians. The bear, the Medes and Persians were lumbering, a slow army. They would bring their families along. It had conquered three major empires, the three bones in its mouth, and it was raised on one side, the one empire stronger than the other. And then we also saw the Greek Empire, that third beast, the leopard, again, very swift, very fast, leaping and pouncing. That's Alexander the Great. And now we're going to really focus on this fourth world empire. And by the way, the Bible's predicted only 4 world empires, not 5, not 6, not 12, not 3, 4. How many world empires have there been? Now you say, well, the United States is a superpower, yeah, but we never controlled the world. We actually never tried to control the world. What about the British Empire? Well, again, it was a powerful state, but it was not a world empire by any stretch of the imagination. These empires controlled the known world. They had the sway of the world all the way around the Mediterranean Sea, and each empire grew and encompassed the other empires. And we're really gonna zero in on that fourth kingdom. Never really ends. It diminishes. It's kind of in, I would call this in hibernation, right where we are right now, which is in the church age. Israel is on the sidelines, and that will all end at the rapture of the church and the beginning of the tribulation. So that's the prophecy chart and our understanding of Daniel and how it lines up with even with Revelation. Now let's look back at a couple verses we've already covered, but let's focus in on them again today. In Daniel 7 verse 13 it says, and remember this is Daniel, he had been having a vision, a dream in the first year of Belshazzar. So we're back now talking about the first year of the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. And I saw in night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. So this of course would be Jesus the Messiah in his second coming, came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. This is God the Father, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. So we have here the final kingdom, and it's not just a spiritual kingdom. A lot of people will read these verses and say, well, they spiritualize it. It's not a literal earthly kingdom. It's kind of a spiritual kingdom, and Jesus is reigning from the throne in heaven, and once everyone hears the gospel, he returns, and it's kind of a spiritualization of 1,000 years. But it's not a literal 1,000 years, because it can't be, because we've had more than 1,000 years. So it's this very vague understanding of a millennial kingdom, but this is a very concrete kingdom, isn't it? This is a kingdom where he will reign all nations, all people, all languages, and he will have dominion, and this will be an everlasting dominion. If Satan is bound right now, which is a hallmark of the millennial kingdom, 1,000-year reign of Christ, if Satan is bound today, he has a really long chain. I mean, have you seen the world? Have you seen the heinous things that are happening? So we are not living in the millennium today, my friends. We are not. It's going to come, and this will be an everlasting kingdom. It will be a real kingdom, but don't spiritualize this. This is an actual kingdom. Daniel 7:14, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So when is this future kingdom coming? Well, remember in the chapter 2 dream of the statue, there's a rock that comes and hits the feet of the statue, and the whole thing disintegrates into teeny little pieces and just blows away in the wind. The rock, the Bible says, is Jesus, and he comes back in the second coming. This is the second coming of Christ, He comes back to earth and he obliterates the Antichrist, the revised Roman Empire, the one world government, and he sets up his everlasting kingdom on the earth. It all fits with what the Bible has to say. That last 7 years, the tribulation period, we call this, is future. It starts when the Antichrist confirms a treaty with Israel, and it ends when Jesus Christ comes back to the earth in his second coming. The rock comes and obliterates the statue, and it's an everlasting kingdom. There will be no end to the kingdom of Jesus Christ. You say, why is it 1,000 years? Because at the end of 1,000 years, the Bible says Satan is loosed, so he can create one final world rebellion. You say, why would God do that? I think it's simply to do this, to prove that under perfect conditions, when you have a perfect king and everyone has the same level of economic status, of education, everything's level, people will still rebel against God. Because that's what people say. Well, if we can just take money from the rich and give it to the poor, or if we could just, create equality in education, all of these things, and some of these are noble causes, but that's not the problem. The problem isn't inequality or racism. That's really not the problem. Certainly racism is a problem. It's not the problem. By the way, we're not a racist nation systemically. We are not. They're spreading that. It's not true. Is there racism? Yeah. There's racism in the Bible. Jewish people were racist against the Samaritan people. Okay, it's not always white against black. Okay? If you don't like someone for the place that they come from or their accent, it's wrong. And you're in sin if you have that mentality. Okay? But the problem is not all of that. The problem is sin, right? The world won't address that. But when everything's equal, we still will see a rebellion against God and a final rebellion, and God will put that down and set up an everlasting kingdom of heaven on earth. So all of that is coming in the future. Let's continue in Daniel 7, verse 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Have you ever had a dream that unsettled